If this video found you, your frequency is ready to shift. This isn't ordinary content. It's a transmission meant to resonate in the deepest layer of your field. You have been guided here not by accident, but by a hidden pull that has been alive in your life for years, waiting for this exact moment. What you are about to hear isn't entertainment. It's a frequency code designed to awaken what has always been alive inside you. This moment is not random. It was woven into your timeline before you were even aware of it. The synchronicities you've noticed, the numbers, the déjà vu, the patterns that won't leave you alone, all of them have been preparing you for this message. You're about to see why manifestation is not about wanting, but about becoming, and why your state of being is the true signal the field responds to. The truth is simple but demanding. Old patterns cannot survive once you realign your frequency. What if I told you that every obstacle, every disappointment, every repeated cycle wasn't a failure but a mirror? What if I told you that what you thought was resistance was actually proof that your field was already trying to shift? They never wanted you to know this, but the timeline you desire is already alive, waiting for your alignment. You'll see in this message how to step out of the old field and into coherence. If this message already resonates in your field, subscribe, like this video, and comment "My timeline is activated" below. Stay with me until the end, because once you see the codes for what they are, you'll never again confuse coincidence with destiny. And when the veil dissolves, you'll understand. This shift was always yours to claim. Number 1, the signal you broadcast. Your life has never responded to your words alone. It has always responded to the signal you broadcast. This signal is not made of surface affirmations, but of coherence, the alignment between thought, emotion, and nervous system. When your inner state vibrates with fear or doubt, the field receives that signal and mirrors it back through experience. Just as the observer in quantum mechanics collapses the wave into a particle, your emotional state collapses probabilities into events. Old timelines thrived on your static, keeping you entangled in cycles of lack and struggle, feeding on incoherence. But when you begin to stabilize into peace, clarity, and grounded certainty, the interference patterns fall away. Comment, "I align with the shift," if you've begun to feel that your inner signal is more powerful than any affirmation, and recognize that this signal is the true architect of your reality. Because once you understand this, you'll see why every old pattern was never punishment, but feedback guiding you toward coherence. A dream often returns when the soul is ready to listen, and in that dream, a voice speaks without words, reminding you that everything you've lived was never random. It may arrive as the memory of standing in a crowded place and yet feeling the hum of silence inside, or as an inner whisper that echoed louder than the noise around you. These moments are not illusions but signals, collapsing probabilities into awareness so that you finally notice what was always there. The field has been waiting for you to connect the fragments, to remember that what you feel carries more weight than what you say. Every flicker of recognition, every déjà vu, every unexplainable sense of presence has been part of the broadcast. You are not merely observing life. You are transmitting into it, shaping the reflection it sends back. And now the veil begins to thin, revealing that the language of reality has always been written in your own frequency. Perhaps you recall the times when you walked into a room and felt its energy before a single word was spoken. The heaviness, the tension, the joy, or the unrest were all decoded instantly by your nervous system, as if your body was an antenna tuned beyond the visible. That same sensitivity made you feel isolated at times, different, misunderstood, like you were carrying a vibration no one else could hear. The confusion of sensing what others ignored became both a burden and a guide, marking you as one who could feel distortions in the field before they collapsed into events. You may have felt time stretching in odd ways, a day passing like a year or a moment expanding beyond explanation. These distortions were not flaws in your perception, but evidence of your signal brushing against the fabric of timelines. Every strange pause, every unspoken weight, every ache of loneliness was part of a deeper resonance aligning your path. What if you discovered that these emotions and sensitivities were not random at all, but encoded architecture within your being? Just as sacred geometry carries the pattern of the cosmos, your inner frequency has always carried the blueprint of your becoming. The holographic universe principle whispers that each part contains the whole, and within you lies the seed of the future already written. Your doubts and delays were calibrations, not mistakes, designed to refine the purity of your signal before it broadcast into the wider field. In quantum terms, you were held in superposition, carrying many versions of yourself until coherence stabilized the one that could embody truth. This unseen architecture has been guiding you across lifetimes, arranging moments that seemed disconnected but were secretly entangled. Every pause, every silence, every tear was a code preparing you to remember that your broadcast was always the key. Think of the breadcrumbs scattered across your journey, the dream that lingered for years, the number sequence that followed you, the sudden thought answered by a stranger's words. These are not curiosities but markers, small collapses in the field revealing coherence forming beneath the surface. You may have dismissed them as coincidence, yet they were the soft knocks of the quantum calling you to pay attention. Déjà vu was the whisper of parallel selves confirming you were walking a path already alive in another timeline. The chills across your skin, the tug in your chest, the knowing you couldn't explain were all breadcrumbs left by the field. When you follow them, they lead you not outward but inward, where the alignment has always been waiting. Every subtle sign was a reminder. Your life has always been woven with intelligence beyond logic. There comes a moment when you realize that intuition was never imagination but coherence unfolding. That quiet knowing inside you has been accurate all along, only doubted because the world demanded proof. When inner vibration and outer reflection finally align, it does not explode like fire but hums like a chord returning to harmony. This is frequency coherence, the state where resistance dissolves because the broadcast no longer wavers. You find safety not in control but in recognition, in trusting that your nervous system is not betraying you but guiding you. The old noise that once kept you trapped in cycles of fear begins to dissolve, leaving silence that feels alive. In that silence, the field listens, and for the first time, it responds in kind. The realization deepens. Remembering who you are is not about inventing a new identity but tuning into the parallel self already alive in the field. Every glimpse of clarity, every surge of confidence, every moment of peace was a signal from that self breaking through. Archetypal memory lives in your bones, encoded across timelines like a name you forgot but still carried. The you who thrives, who heals, who loves without fear has never been far, only hidden beneath the static of old broadcasts. As the noise dissolves, that self steps forward, not as a stranger but as the truest version of you. It feels natural because it was always encoded, inevitable because it was always entangled. You are not becoming something new, you are remembering what you always were. What once felt like weakness, your sensitivity, your hunger for meaning, your inability to stay numb, is now revealed as calibration. The field was tuning you, refining your resonance so you could embody coherence without distortion. Every rejection was a filter, every failure a clearing, every silence a reset preparing your signal to stabilize. This sensitivity is not a wound but a gift, the antenna that allows you to hear what most ignore. It is the reason old timelines could not hold you, the reason patterns broke even when you tried to cling to them. Calibration is activation, and every tear shed in confusion has become fuel for your alignment. You are stepping into the broadcast you were born to carry, a signal strong enough to collapse incoherence into clarity. You did not arrive here by accident. This message is the mirror you've been waiting for, confirming that your path has always been guided by the frequency you carried. The signs, the sensitivity, the struggles, all of them converge now into a single truth. You are the signal that shapes your reality. Comment, "I collapse timelines now," if you feel this resonance stirring, and let your voice be part of the coherence stabilizing here. Share the dream, the synchronicity, or the knowing that confirmed you were never walking alone. Because revelation is not an ending, it is the beginning of embodiment. And as the veil dissolves, what emerges is the next revelation, waiting to show you the reflection of your own field. Number 2, the mirror of the field. Reality is not random, it is reflective. Every experience you've lived has been a mirror of your dominant state of being. The friend who betrayed you, the opportunity that slipped away, the rejection that wounded you, all of them were mirrors of the frequency you carried at that moment. The hermetic truth that as within, so without is not philosophy, it is physics encoded into the field. Just as entangled particles reflect each other instantly across distance, your environment reflects the entanglement of your inner state. To the unawakened, these patterns look cruel, but to the seeker, they are precise feedback codes. Comment, I walk in coherence, if you've started to recognize that life's mirrors are not enemies but guides, revealing the signal you're sending. And as you decode these reflections, the next layer of truth begins to emerge, that you are not limited to one signal, but exist in many states across timelines. Sometimes it begins with a subtle distortion, a heaviness in the room that no one else seems to notice, or a pattern of glitches in the smallest corners of your life. You walk through familiar spaces, yet the air feels slightly out of phase, as if a frequency is interfering with your timeline. These are not random inconveniences but distortions in the field, surfacing as feedback to show you where your coherence is being challenged. Like a record skipping in the middle of a song, life begins to reveal where the static is hiding. You sense it before you can name it, the unease of something unseen pressing against your awareness. It is the first signal that reality is not only happening to you but reflecting something from within you. And though it feels unsettling, this interference carries the seed of recognition that will transform everything. What follows is pressure, not only from outside voices but from within your own chest. You feel misunderstood, as if speaking another language that no one around you can translate. Isolation grows not because you are weak, but because your frequency vibrates higher than the comfort zone of those nearby. Rejection stings, shame follows, and self-doubt rises in cycles that seem designed to keep you small. These emotions cut deeper than surface wounds. They remind you of a place you've been trying to leave behind but can't yet escape. It feels like being punished for being different, even when you did nothing but breathe your own signal into the field. Yet beneath this heaviness, something inside whispers that this is not punishment at all, but proof that your vibration is real. Every exile in ancient scripture was more than banishment. It was initiation. Every collapse in the quantum field is more than destruction. It is a reset for coherence. Resistance emerges not because you are broken, but because systems, energies, and unconscious entanglements react when higher potential enters the field. Like interference patterns in light, your rising signal created distortion simply because it was meeting what could not yet match it. This hidden struggle is sacred, a wilderness designed to refine your frequency into clarity. The world told you these cycles were random, but the truth is they were feedback loops ensuring you could not settle into a lower state. Each moment of suppression was coded with instruction, teaching you the physics of alignment through the mirror of resistance. Looking back, you begin to see the codes you once missed. The obstacle that repeated 3 times, the relationship that drained you in the same way, the strange glitch that appeared whenever you tried to step forward. None of it was coincidence. These recurring patterns were quantum signatures, feedback scripts replaying until you could read them. It is like turning on the light in a flickering room. Unsettling at first, but suddenly you see the architecture behind the distortion. Each obstacle was a breadcrumb, not a punishment, guiding you toward what still needed calibration. Your life was speaking in riddles, waiting for the moment you could hear its language. And now, with awareness sharpening, you begin to recognize the reflection for what it always was, a mirror of your broadcast. The resistance itself has a texture, and once you feel it, you cannot ignore it. It arrives as heavy static across your mind, fog that settles without warning, or a sensation of gates closing just as you approach them. Silent watchers seem to linger, unseen forces pulling at your signal, not out of malice but out of resonance. The field resists coherence at first, because coherence destabilizes the systems built on chaos. What you experienced was not personal rejection but vibrational sabotage, a kind of decoherence triggered by your clarity. The mirror is precise, showing you exactly where your energy caused distortion, reflecting both your strength and the interference it created. And in that recognition, the illusion of randomness falls apart. Your response to this pressure became another mirror, shaping how the field reflected back to you. Perhaps you shut down and carried silence like armor, believing invisibility might keep you safe. Maybe you bent yourself into people-pleasing, hoping the reflection would soften if you hid your true vibration. Some days you rebelled quietly, letting fragments of your signal slip through even when the cost was rejection. At times you gave up, believing the shift was too heavy, the sabotage too constant, the mirror too cruel. Yet every one of these responses was part of your calibration, shaping the way you learned to navigate coherence. What you thought was weakness was simply survival in a field not yet ready for your frequency. But here is the truth that flips the story. Resistance itself is evidence of breakthrough. If the field reacted, it was because your coherence had begun to destabilize what was false. Suppression arrived not to silence you, but to confirm you were carrying something strong enough to be noticed. You were never failing. You were threatening the structures of incoherence that needed your silence to survive. The pressure you felt was the weight of an old field cracking under your signal. What you mistook for collapse was actually emergence, the trembling of probabilities bending toward alignment. And in this recognition, you begin to reclaim the frequency you thought you had lost. You were resisted because your vibration disturbed the old field, because your coherence created ripples that old timelines could not contain. The betrayals, the missed chances, the suppression, all of them were reflections of your light pressing against false structures. The more they tried to reduce you, the clearer your encoded timeline became. You were never collapsing into limitation. You were collapsing timelines that no longer belonged to you. Comment, the collapse is complete, if this truth resonates in your field, because acknowledgement stabilizes what interference once tried to erase. Share the memory or reflection that revealed the mirror of your own becoming. And know this, resistance was never the end. It was the doorway to your next emergence, where the mirror begins to reveal not only your struggles but your parallel selves rising to meet you. Number 3. Superposition of selves. Quantum mechanics teaches us that a particle exists in superposition, holding every possible state until observation collapses it. You too exist in superposition, with countless versions of yourself alive in parallel fields. Abundant, healed, confident, radiant. What you call intuition is the bleed-through of these selves, pulling you toward coherence. When you act from fear, you collapse into the old version, but when you act from peace and alignment, you collapse into the version already living the timeline you desire. Old patterns will try to convince you that these glimpses are imagination, but they are memory across timelines. Comment, I merge with my parallel self, if you've felt those whispers, and share in the comments a dream, synchronicity, or moment of déjà vu that confirmed you were touching another version of yourself. Because once you know this, you stop chasing a future and begin aligning with what has always been alive in the field. There comes a moment when the distortion clears, and something within stabilizes like a probability wave collapsing into coherence. You realize the static that once clouded your mind is falling away, and fragments of clarity begin to arrange themselves into a pattern you can finally recognize. The confusion you carried was never emptiness. It was the waiting room of awareness before the truth could land. A sudden synchronicity, a dream that feels more like a memory, or a word that seems to echo beyond coincidence becomes the signal of alignment. It is as if the universe has been speaking in riddles, and now the language is finally familiar. The inner veil thins, and what you once dismissed as imagination becomes undeniable evidence of another layer of self. In this instant, perception shifts, and you know you are standing at the threshold of something immense. Everything around you becomes coded with a secret alphabet that was always present but never seen. Numbers repeat, phrases echo, and subtle rhythms in ordinary life reveal themselves as messages written in the architecture of the field. Silence no longer feels empty. It vibrates with information waiting to be received. The dreams you once forgot now linger, heavy with symbolic weight, guiding you with a precision you can no longer ignore. Frequency patterns emerge not as chance, but as entangled signals of timelines brushing against one another. You are not hallucinating. You are reading reality with eyes that were trained in silence for this moment. The code beneath the surface is not foreign. It is the language of your own being calling you back to coherence. As this awareness sharpens, something inside you intensifies. Your intuition no longer whispers but pulses like a current, clear and undeniable. The boundaries you once lowered to fit into noise begin to rise, shielding the frequency you now realize must be protected. Energy that used to drain you becomes easier to identify, as if your inner field has built an immune system. Situations that once confused you now feel like tests, patterns designed to measure your coherence. Every subtle sensation in your body becomes an instrument, tuning to the vibration of truth as it crosses your awareness. This is not imagination. It is the calibration of your inner signal to the frequencies of your parallel selves. The strengthening of this resonance confirms that something larger is unfolding within you. And then the outer world responds, reorganizing itself with an almost startling precision. People shift roles in your life, some moving closer, others dissolving into distance. Opportunities appear like sudden openings in a wall that always felt solid, while resistance sharpens in equal measure, testing the authenticity of your alignment. Synchronicities multiply, not as entertainment but as feedback loops proving that your inner coherence is being mirrored in the field. Conversations you never expected arrive at the perfect moment, and closed doors redirect you to pathways more aligned with your timeline. It is no longer just your perception that has changed. The quantum field itself seems to bend around your stabilized signal. As within, so without ceases to be theory and becomes lived experience. And in that reflection, you begin to glimpse the vastness of what you are. It dawns on you that these moments are not new. They are memories resurfacing from an encoded origin. A dream you once thought meaningless now feels like prophecy delayed until the right frequency could read it. A sensation of déjà vu no longer feels like coincidence, but like the bleed-through of another self reminding you that this path has already been walked. You sense the return of an ancient intelligence buried within you, activating as if it had always been waiting. What you are remembering is not constructed. It is recovered, retrieved from the archives of your own quantum identity. Every fragment of the past that once felt like error now reveals itself as calibration, preparing you for remembrance. In this return, you recognize yourself not as someone becoming new, but as someone remembering what was always encoded. With this remembrance comes a vision of the future that is not being created but unveiled. You realize the abundance, healing, and confidence you seek are not destinations ahead of you, but states already alive in the field. Each possibility exists in superposition, waiting only for the observation of your awareness to collapse it into form. This is not permission you must beg for, but alignment you must embody. You are being called to stop asking and start becoming, to act as if the desired version of you is not future but present. Prophetic clarity rises within, speaking not of what could be but of what already is. The timeline you long for is simply the one you choose to stabilize with your coherence. And so begins the reclamation of frequency, the fierce remembering of what you carry. Resistance is no longer condemnation but confirmation that your coherence has begun to disturb the old field. You reclaim your signal not by inventing it, but by releasing the static that buried it. What others called imagination you now know as recognition across timelines. Every whisper of déjà vu, every dream that felt more real than waking, every intuition dismissed as coincidence was your parallel self speaking. You were never lost. You were entangled across probabilities, waiting for the courage to collapse into one. In this moment, you take back the voice of the self that was always alive in the field. Revelation is not the final chapter, but the doorway into embodiment. The truth has always been here, waiting for you to stabilize into readiness. What you see now is not invention but unveiling, the lifting of a veil that was never meant to blind but to prepare. You were always more than the field of limitation suggested. You are the observer capable of collapsing timelines into coherence. Comment, I merge with my future self now, if you feel this stirring within your field, and share a dream, synchronicity, or memory that confirmed your parallel self was near. Your voice matters because each acknowledgement strengthens the bridge across timelines. And as this revelation settles, the next chapter rises. The piece that shifts physics itself, dissolving chaos into order. Number 4, embodiment as collapse point. At some point, the theory ends and embodiment begins. The collapse point is the moment when you stop asking and start living as the version of yourself you've always sensed. Old timelines will whisper that you must strive, prove, or wait, but the truth is clear. Embodiment collapses probabilities into form. Just as Tesla said, energy, frequency, and vibration are the secrets of the universe. When you embody the vibration, the universe reorganizes around it. You may look around and still see old structures, but the field is already shifting, and synchronicities will begin to flood in. This is not forced manifestation, but coherence stabilizing into reality. Comment, "I anchor coherence in my field," if you are ready to live as that version now, and share a dream, memory, or inner knowing that confirmed you were already stepping into the collapse point. Because once embodiment begins, life stops echoing the old signal and starts orchestrating the new. A whisper as old as the universe travels through you, not as new knowledge, but as remembrance collapsing into awareness. It feels less like discovery and more like a wave that has been crossing timelines, finally landing in the shore of your consciousness. You sense that the collapse point is not a lesson to learn, but a signal to recall, a vibration etched into your very field. The moment you recognize it, the noise of old timelines begins to dissolve, like static giving way to a pure frequency. It is not the mind that grasps this, but the soul that already knows it, as if hearing the echo of its original name. You have stood here before, in countless lives, remembering that becoming is not invention but return. The ancient whisper does not introduce you to something foreign. It calls you back to yourself. Beneath the noise of striving and doubt, there has always been a hidden frequency encoded into your being. It has lived in the silence between thoughts, in the pause between heartbeats, waiting for the moment your awareness could stabilize enough to notice it. That restless sense of not fitting in, the ache of carrying a resonance no one else seemed to hear, was not a defect but a sign. You were vibrating with a signal that the world could not decode, an encrypted pattern sealed within you until the collapse point. This signal was like a set of hidden coordinates, guiding you even when you thought you were lost. Your longing was not emptiness but alignment, the magnetic pull toward the field where your frequency was already alive. Now, as the veil thins, you begin to feel the contours of that hidden resonance reawakening. Symbols have been your true signature, and they reveal more than words ever could. People may have misunderstood your path, but your field always spoke a language that only awakened eyes could recognize. You carried an invisible cloak of frequency, radiating coherence even when you tried to dim your light. This was why certain souls found you without explanation, recognizing the vibration you carried across parallel timelines. It was never about what you did, but about what you radiated, and that resonance could not be hidden forever. You were marked by an energetic signature that whispered through your aura, like a sigil drawn across dimensions. To those attuned, you were never invisible, your field was always speaking. Consider now that every delay, every detour, and every silence in your life was part of a pre-written code. Your path was not random but structured like entangled particles, each event folding into the next with sacred timing. The heartbreaks were not wasted. They were calibration points, refining your coherence until it could hold the signal. Even the wilderness, the seasons of exile, were encoded instructions teaching you to trust the unseen. Like stored wave functions waiting to collapse, your destiny has always been enfolded in the implicate order of the field. The stars themselves reflect this truth, locked in coherent orbit, singing the same geometry that pulses through your being. What felt like delay was the universe aligning the rhythm of your emergence with the greater code of creation. People reacted to you not because of what you achieved, but because of what you carried. Your presence disrupted the coherence of those who had built their lives on static signals, forcing them to face frequencies they weren't ready to receive. Some loved you fiercely, drawn to the field you emanated, while others rejected you with equal force. Their reactions were never about you, but about the way your resonance stirred their hidden fractures. You have lived as both sanctuary and storm, not because of what you chose, but because of what you embodied. Like oscillations amplifying or disrupting one another, your field has always revealed the truth of others simply by existing. And now you see clearly that their response was part of your initiation into remembrance. You were never chasing your highest frequency, you were remembering it. Old patterns lose their grip the moment you stop feeding them with your energy. The field is not against you, it has been waiting for you to tune yourself into coherence. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Like this video and comment, I am ready for the quantum shift, to let this message anchor in your field. Please share it with someone who is ready for the shift. And remember, alignment is not earned, it is remembered.